I'm filming this as we've just ended the second month of a new year. And if you're like me, I often take this time to kind of recalibrate and take a look at where I stand versus the goals that I set for myself at the beginning of the new year. But the thing I always have to ask myself is, am I focusing on the things that are most important? Hi, everyone. Chris NATZKE here with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching with your Mind of a Champion tip of the week. Are we focusing on what's most important? It brings me to mind a story that I heard several years ago about legendary Beatle John Lennon. John was a grade school boy, and the teacher had assigned the entire class an assignment, which was simply, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, the day or two after the assignment was given, all the kids were in front of the class and they were sharing what they wanted to be when they grew up: a fireman, an astronaut, a nurse, a secretary. And then it came to young John, and he stood in front of the room and simply said, I want to be happy. Well, legend has it that the teacher wasn't very happy with John with that answer and pressed him to give a little bit more definition as to what he was going to be when he came to be an adult, but he wouldn't relent. In fact, maybe this is the first time that the rebel musician was starting to come out of his shell. But think about it. He really was saying something important. Despite all the things that we may want to achieve in our lives and the experience that we want to have, when you get right down to it, all of us just really want to be happy. Now, it brings also the idea of how we set our goals. And in their book, From Me to We, brothers Mark and Craig Kielburger cite the distinction of two types of goals. One are extrinsic goals. These are goals that we set in our career, in our health and wellness, in our finances. These are things that we can measure on the outside and see if we're successful or not. The other type of goal is intrinsic goals. And this is how we grow as a person. This is how we develop as human beings. This is how we feel inside. This is how we serve others. Now, it's my experience that any healthy set of goals that we have an equal balance of these. Sometimes by focusing on the extrinsic, we can get to the intrinsic, and other times by focusing on the intrinsic, we can most easily get the extrinsic goals. So as we're taking some time here, as we're beginning the third month of a new year, and maybe you're looking at your goals, I'm going to give you 3 questions that I ask myself as well as my clients, and I'm going to ask you right now as well, that maybe helps you pause a little bit and get back on track if in fact you're a little bit off kilter in terms of being on focus for the goals for this new year. And so the first question is to ask yourself is, how do I want to feel? I know that might sound a little touchy and feely, but you may have had instances in your life, I know I have, where you're striving for a goal and you're going for it, and then you get it. And once you attain it, you just don't feel that great about it. It's just, okay, what's the next thing? So in those goals, intrinsically, how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel loving, courageous, confident, trusting? How do you want to feel when you accomplish that goal? And maybe is that just a focus in and of itself about how you want to feel each and every day? When you start your mornings, how can you calibrate yourself so that from the inside out, you're focusing on your best you? Number 2 is, how do you want to be, or who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be known as? Do you want to be the type of person that is showing up powerfully for yourself and others? Do you want to be someone that others can rely upon, that can look up to, that you know that you're true to your word? Who do you want to be? Because I can tell you, if we don't have that inside of ourselves and we're not expressing that and set that as a priority, it doesn't matter what we accomplish on the outside if we're not true to ourselves and showing ourselves in the highest degree of character. Number three is ask yourself is, who do I want to serve? Who do I want to serve? Each and every one of us, I believe, have a unique set of gifts that we were given. And those gifts, I believe, are something that we were meant to share in the world. Now, some of us do it in very large ways, very public ways, and others do it in very private ways. But when we're actually focusing on serving the world through the gifts that we have, I think that's where we become our most powerful version of ourselves and also attain the greatest amount of happiness. I just want you to think about this. Now, I have no empirical data to back this up. This is my own personal theory. But think about if every person on this planet was familiar with the gifts they needed to give to the world, and they were actively sharing it and serving others with it. I would think that almost all the problems in the world would go away. Why? Because so many of us would feel so happy about what we were doing, and we would want nothing else for others to have the same. So think about that. Who do you want to serve? And then finally, why is it important to you? Why is it important to you? I know from my own experience that anytime we set a big goal for ourselves, I've set a big goal for myself, I'm almost always going to come up against a challenge. In fact, I'd argue that the bigger the goal, the bigger the challenge that we're going to come across. Now, when those come across, oftentimes we come to a fork in the road. We come to a choice point. Do we want to continue or do we want to stop? And my experience is that when I have a really strong why, when that's etched inside of me as to why this is important to me, when I come across those challenges, I'm a lot less apt to give up. Because when there's a purposeful why behind what I'm doing, now what's going to happen is I'm going to have the strength and the resilience to move on. You know, there's a great book by a guy named Brian Clemmer, and it's entitled, If How-Tos Were All It Took, We'd All Be Happy, Skinny, and Rich. So it's not necessarily about the how-tos, although it is important. And it's not always necessarily about the outside extrinsic things, although those can be important as well. But when you understand why it's important to you, now you can take those ways of doing things and you can apply that energy to get what you want and make the impact that you want to make in the world. So there you have it, my friends. There are 4 questions you can ask yourself as you're at this, maybe this crossroad. You've finished 2 months of the new year, and you're like, do I want to still lean into these goals I set for myself? Ask yourself these 4 questions to solidify yourself and get yourself going in the right direction. So this has been Chris NATZKE with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching, and we'll see you next time on the Mind of a Champion Tip of the Week.